Hi, Math Enrichment 7. Today we are going to do to solve some equations that use one step, ones that involve multiplication. But we are going to skip the tiles today and take a look at using some larger numbers and also using some negative numbers, things that are hard to show with tiles. So go ahead and on a piece of paper, I want you to write down this title. And I also want you to write down that you are Math Enrichment 7 and today's date, April 14th, 2020. Hope everybody's doing well. Okay, so make sure you pause the video whenever you need to. And then just work right along with me. If I go too fast, then just pause it and rewind if you need to. And just continue as we go along. And when you're all done, you're going to submit this to Google Classroom. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's our first one. So let's start with something small that we can almost think of in our head. So let's say we have 2x is equal to 6. So if you kind of think about the tiles that we had before, that means if we have 2x, that means we have 2 times x. We have 2 x's. It's like we've got that bundle of x's. These x's are, there's a set of them where there are 2 of them. And the way we're going to, again, think about this as multiplication. When you have 2x, what you really have is 2 times x. And the way we're going to undo that to get the x alone and get rid of the 2 is to divide by that number. So whatever that number is, we call this the coefficient of x. It's the number that's multiplying x. That's its coefficient. So it's coefficient right there. We are always going to divide by the coefficient of x. So we're going to divide, and we're going to show division with our fraction bar. We're going to divide by 2. And we're going to do it on both sides, dividing by 2. So what happens is 2 over 2 forms a giant 1. So that whole thing is just 1. So now you have 1x is equal to 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Well, 1x, that's the same thing as x. And that's what we're looking for. So 1x is equal to 3. So this should seem kind of familiar from what you've done in your regular math class and from what we've done in math enrichment class with the tiles. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say this time that the coefficient of x was negative 2. Let's say I have negative 2x equals 6. But going by what I did in the first problem, and again, that's what math is about, kind of seeing patterns and doing the same type of steps in the same type of situation. We can see that we have a coefficient here, and the coefficient is negative 2. That's the number that is multiplying x. When they're up against each other like that, what's really saying? It's saying negative 2 times x. We've got x. How many times do we have it? Negative 2 times. It'd be like we have 2 red x tiles. So that is our coefficient right there. I'm just going to abbreviate that. Negative 2 is our coefficient. So in order to get rid of that negative 2x, we're going to have to get rid of the negative 2. And so we're going to divide by that exact same number. We're going to divide this quantity by negative 2. Do the same thing on the other side. Divide by negative 2. And again, why do we divide by the exact same number? Because we know that any number divided by itself makes 1. So this whole thing makes a giant 1. So this now becomes 1x, which is equal to 6 divided by negative 2. Okay, a positive divided by negative, that's just a negative. So let's put my negative down. Now let me think about 6 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2, oh, that's 3. So I get negative 3 this time. So again, 1x, that's just the same as x, is negative 3. Okay, so it's easy, right? All you have to do is see that number, that coefficient of x, that number that's up against x, realize that it's multiplying, and then we're going to do that opposite operation. We're going to divide in order to form 1x. Remember, we're not trying to make it go to 0. We want to have 1x left. Remember when we did the algebra tiles, we broke them up into separate groups? So that's what we're doing. We're just separating them out into, we get one single x each. All right, let's try some more. Okay, here's a third one. Let's say we have 5x equals 40. So again, this is one we would not want to have to count out 40 ones in order to make our, use our algebra tiles. So that would just be terrible. But if we look here at the side where the x is, there's a 5 right up against the x. That's telling us we have 5 x's, or 5 times x. 5, that's our coefficient, right? So if we want to get rid of that coefficient, we're going to need to divide by the coefficient. So we're going to take 5x and divide it by 5. Do the same thing on the other side, dividing by 5. And again, what happens when you have 5 over 5? Makes a giant 1. So this whole thing is 1x, or just x. We can skip putting the 1 in front of it. 1x and x, that's the same thing. And then 40 divided by 5 comes out to 8. So the answer is x is equal to 8. Let's try another one. Let's say we have negative 7x is equal to 42. Again, we see this negative 7 is up against the x. That means multiplication is happening. And x is being multiplied by that coefficient. The coefficient is negative 7. So how are we going to get rid of it and change it to 1? We're going to divide by the exact same number. Divide by that coefficient. Do it on the other side too. So negative 7 over negative 7, what does that make? You got it, 1. So we have 1x or just x. 1x and x, remember, are the same thing. And then I have a positive divided by a negative. Okay, I got to put my negative down. And then 42 divided by 7 is 6. Don't be afraid to use a calculator if you forget and want to double check your facts. Let's go to number 5. Let's do negative 8x is equal to negative 64. Okay, so what's your coefficient of x? That's right, it's negative 8. So what are we going to divide this by? That's right, negative 8 on both sides. So the negative 8 over the negative 8 makes a giant 1. Remember, there was multiplication was happening there. We divide to get the opposite. Oops, that's not there. Forget that. So you end up with 1x, or just x, equals, and then a negative divided by a negative makes a positive. 64 divided by 8 makes 8. Let's try the next one. See if you can work just ahead of me to see if you can anticipate what the next step is. So let's say we have 11x equals negative 55. Okay, so we have 11x. That means it's 11 times x. 11 is your coefficient. How are we going to undo that multiplication? That's right, we're going to divide. And what number are we going to divide by? We're going to divide by the coefficient of x. We're going to divide by 11. So both sides get divided by 11. So here, 11 divided by 11 makes 1. 1x, or just x. And on the right-hand side, a negative divided by a positive makes a negative. So that's going to be negative 5. Excuse me. A couple more, 2 more, and then we'll be done. Let's do number 7. So again, I'd like you to try these on your own. Pause after I write down each one, and then try it. In fact, I'll give you both right now. Let's do negative 4x is equal to 12. And number 8, let's have, let's have 10x is equal to negative 50. Why don't you pause this right now and go ahead and try those two, using the ones above them as examples of what to do. Okay, now that you're back, we can go ahead and work these out. So we have -4 up against x, so that means multiplication is happening there. To undo the multiplication, we need to divide. What are we going to divide by? We're going to divide by the coefficient of x, which is what? That's right, it's -4. So divide both sides by -4. Don't forget to make the giant 1. -4 divided by -4 makes 1. So we get 1x, or just x. And on the right, a positive divided by a negative gives us a negative. 12 divided by 4 makes 3. Did you get that one right? Okay. If you didn't, make a correction. If you did, great. Okay, the next one, we have 10x. And so again, that when 10's up against it, it means 10 times x, which means we have to get rid of the 10 by dividing, doing the opposite of multiplying, dividing. And so what are we going to divide by? We're going to divide by the coefficient of x, which is also 10. So divide by 10. So 10 divided by 10, what does that make? You got it. It makes 1. That's how we end up with 1x, or just x. And on the right-hand side, a negative divided by a positive. So that's going to give us a negative. And then 50 divided by 10, that makes 5. Okay, the last thing I want you to do is tell me something fun you've done at home with your family. Okay? Tell me something fun you've done at home with your family. That's what I want you to do as the last question. I want you to fill in the blank there. I can tell you one thing I've been doing. I've been kicking a soccer ball a lot. Oops. We're going over, there's a middle school not too far from us that has a big field. And we're just going over for a little while. And I'm helping my son practice kicking. So I'm going out there with my husband too. So he kicks really far, and then I'll kick it back to my husband, and my husband will kick it back the rest of the way. But that's been fun. Been running around, and there are birds out flying around, and sometimes we're wearing